let's get into some of the newest developments in regards to Quant and also, believe it or not, a highlight for Ripple XRP. You guys have been following me for a while. I cover a lot of the RLN, which is the Regulated Liability Network, and of course the RSN, the Regulated Settlement Network. Emphasis will be on Regulated Settlement Network. As we know, when it comes to real-time gross settlements, Ripple XRP definitely takes the cake in that regard. So for this segment, you're going to see some new developments in regards to Quant and some things that have been happening in the background. Now, a little disclaimer. Yes, Quant is no longer on X. I mean, technically speaking, they are, but you have to go to places like LinkedIn, the institutional X, to get some of this coverage. There was a video that was posted on Velo from some key people in regards to RSN and also from Citi. This is another update in regards to a clip from a video I did maybe about 2 or 3 videos back. Smash the like if you haven't done so already. Let's get into the material and why I'm bringing it to you guys. First thing we're going to jump into is from this particular posting that was not that long ago from LinkedIn. Shout out to Quant Papa for some of the clips, some of the research, and so on in this collaboration. I'm going to take you over to LinkedIn, and what you're going to see here is some things should catch your attention because 2025 is coming really, really soon. First thing that's mentioned over here is 2 days ago from UK Finance, by the way. It says here specifically that the government is developing a new financial services growth and competitive strategy to help their sector thrive and enhance its ability to support growth across the whole UK economy. Now, I get it, guys. You guys want to see a lot of focus on what's going on in the US. Again, understand that UK is literally setting the precedents moving forward, the standard moving forward, not just because of the whole thing of TC 307 with Quant, but again, what did Rue mention earlier? Standards. So what do we have here? Well, HM Treasury. As we know, HM Treasury will always stand out because Gilbert Verdian's connections to them, how long he's worked with them and so on. Over 20 years plus in cybersecurity. As I get further into this, I want to point out some key highlights. So what is their strategy? What are their key goals? Well, 6 of them. And they state that they're going to reinforce and build their sector with strong foundations, unlock financial services growth engine. These terms, growth engine, well, what kind of platform is running on that engine? Think about it for a moment. Driving innovation, technology, advancing sustainable finance, enhancing and modernizing capital markets. You like the terms. Capital market ecosystems are absolutely ripping right now, especially things like Clearpool, meeting the skills, needs, and financial services providers and users. All right, so they got a commitment. They're definitely working with the UK government. They're working with industry partners and so on. But remember how Gilbert Verdian literally pointed out last August about a call to action? Well, in my opinion, this is the call to action. Now we have what they refer to as a call to evidence. As I full screen this, I'm going to point out some other key things from ukfinance.org, but if anything, jumping down to this next particular part, because when we get further into it, well, what do you have from ukfinance.org.uk? It's about policy and guidance, consultation, responses. Basically, in a nutshell, it's the UK finance response in regards to HM Treasury's call for evidence. So we know that Quant is referred to as the industry's foundation for building on blockchain. But their other slogan recently is the foundation for digital finance. Okay? So emphasis is on finance. So the government is developing a new financial services growth and competitive strategy. And when I got further down into this, I thought I would highlight this because we just had Rue on the show. Rue pointed out the highlights of what's going on in 2025. The government plans to publish its financial services growth and competitive strategy in spring of 2025. Does this not sound like it's in alignment with the deadlines that were mentioned with the BIS of March of 2025? I think that's definitely worth pointing out. It says this is going to be alongside its overarching industry strategy. They'll be working closely, of course, with the government as it develops its thinking on both strategies over the coming months. All right. So this was posted literally on December 12th. Capital markets and wholesale, consultation responses, and if anything, again, why is it a big deal? Well, how many times did you see posts about anti-money laundering, counterterrorism and so on? Well, how about this for the UK government? Anti-bribery and corruption for 2025. They have a forecast that shows that the anti-bribery and corruption agenda is heating up. Okay, so with all these people, well, they come together, and that brings us to INATBA. We see Dr. Luke Riley. He was a moderator at this particular presentation, if you will. If you've been following INATBA closely, INATBA always comes up in discussion, especially when it comes to like things like XDC, heck, even Ripple XRP, all the big players, right? But emphasis is on, of course, interoperability. This literally happened 2 days ago in this panel. And you also see here, joining forces for blockchain standardization. Well, how so? Because if anything, Quant is its own standard in itself. ISO TC 307, the foundation for building on blockchain, interoperability at full scale. As I get further into this, I want to take you over to this particular clipping from Quant Papa. So we talked about some of these agendas. Danelle Dixon said that in 2025, there would be an emphasis on DAOs. Boy, was she ever right. So we see smart contracts. Stellar obviously is taking the cake with that when it comes to Sorbonne. But DAOs and governance, interoperability, identity and wallets. In this outline, we'll at least give it honorable mention. Are you guys aware there's a thing called the Over Wallet? In another deep dive, I'll get more into that. So when we talk about Quant leading the charge when it comes to interoperability, understand this. They're also going to lead the charge in the future with this thing literally called the Over Wallet. Now, we know about Quant when it comes to the Overledger platform, when it comes to true interoperability, blockchain agnostic, and so on. But in the future, to be able to have something called the Over Wallet, where you have full interoperability, if you will, with things like MetaMask, Coinbase Wallet, all that, but more importantly, what Augustine Carson's was referring to in regards to the Finternet and having offline versions of this. Well, what about offline wallets? Again, the Over Wallet. We're going to get more into that on another day. As I jump back into this, I want to put some emphasis on, again, some of the materials. Unified ledgers and what's next. Would Ripple XRP be part of this mix? Well, you better believe it. But these speakers at this particular event included some key people. And here's the highlight without getting too technical. How many times do you see reference in regards to ISO? How many times do you see reference in regards to LACchain? And also IEEE. As we see here, you see people from Quant, like Alex Chirac. You see, for example, some other key people. And you also see numerous mentions, once again, about Quant, Dr. Luke Riley, Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. And again, constant references to what, everybody? People from ISO. So when we talk about the deadline happening in 2025, and you have this meetup, and you have the whole emphasis on what? This right here, about joining forces for interoperability. Well, again, put two and two together. Try your own conclusion. See what outcome you will come out with. All right. I did mention the whole thing about unified ledgers. INATBA had this whole thing, of course, on the 13th, but Alex Chirac was there. He did his own presentation. It was only about 20 minutes, but the emphasis was unified ledgers within regulated liability networks. All right. If Quant isn't that much of a big deal, why is all of the big players from ISO meeting up with them? Yeah, I think you understand where I'm going with this. And speaking of which, there's some key highlights that I think even needs to get mentioned in that regard. Because if you follow Algorand, well, this gentleman Professor Silvio Macaulay, founder of Algorand Technologies, accepted the Humanitarian Excellence Award. What do you see in the background in regards to this, everybody? INATBA. What do you also see in the background? European Union blockchain. All right. So if all the big players with INATBA met with Quant for interoperability, well, we also understand that you can have Algorand part of the mix of obviously ISO because they are ISO 222 compliant. But are they also part of the whole thing of the RLN, the RSN? I believe we've done that research in the past, but definitely worth noting. As I jump more into this, I want to take you over to inatba.org because you see all these particular winners, if you will. And the key thing is a lot of emphasis, not just on Professor Silvio Macaulay, but it's the top part. INATBA Awards 2025, the Summit Awards of the Blockchain Ecosystem. Embrace the success of their third edition, celebrating worldwide projects doing what? Leveraging blockchain for positive industry transformation. Okay, so there's tickets to this and so on. And again, some of these deadlines coming up. Speaking of deadline, it literally shows that there's a voting deadline on the 15th of January 2025. Back to Rue Black's call to action in regards to January 1st. Then there's another one, which is the winners being announced. And that's cool and all, but that's not necessarily utility in motion. But again, these people meeting up because the new shift of what's going to happen in regards to 2025. INATBA, if you weren't aware of it, is referred to as the International Association for Trusted Blockchain Applications. Speaking of INATBA, just in case you're wondering, the Quant connection, what do we have here? We have, straight from the Quant Network site, all the way back to March 6th of 2019, Quant Network is a founding member of INATBA. So it's not just like, oh, INATBA has a partnership with Quant. Oh, they have this thing that just recently happened with Quant. No, Quant is a founding member of INATBA. So when we talk about, having chairmen of the boards meeting at a particular board meeting at this giant table, like I always mentioned before, how about Quant being literally the table? And Quant Network being a pioneer in setting the blockchain agenda, again, for governments. And what do we have going into 2025? This exact same quote, if you will. All right, how about this? Quant Network, been a pioneer, I should say. I just said about the blockchain agenda. But firstly, by founding the blockchain ISO standard TC 307 in 2015, by the way, where 53 countries, and now it's a lot higher than that, now collaborate globally to implement a standard that will be adopted globally by government and technology and service providers. Back to what Rue Black was talking about with those standards leading into 2025. How has this not aged well? Quant Network will also drive and facilitate the collaboration of INATBA with ISO TC 307. All right, awesome. What else do we have in regards to this? Well, shout out to Sebastian. He's part of our panel. He is absolutely great guy, and he hosts these X Spaces. And I encourage you to follow us over on X. As you can see, it can be followed at DPG Maximus, but every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, we do these Q&T discussions about what's going on with Q&T. So if that's your thing, definitely come and join us over there. But I will full screen this because this is something that's worth citing because I'm talking about it. So Sebastian talks about how Quant Network will be attending INATBA. We've been there, done that. But in numbers, this is great. INATBA, 140 members from 32 countries, 42 organizations from 32 countries, 64 academic advisory members from 20 countries. But hey, just worry about them leaving X. I'll worry about that when they truly relentlessly do and build, right? Yeah, their focus is not on retail, Don't get me wrong, on X, there's Ripple XRP, Stellar, and so on. But again, the way I look at it is Quant is doing some things that they just feel as though they don't need to worry about a retail narrative on X. Speaking of which, let's talk about some other things. So what do we have? Well, I want to point this out for you guys. Yes, I realize that Broadridge is not part of Quant, but how many times did I point out about HQLA with, for example, Quant for interoperability and so on? So this is from Ledger Insights. Broadridge expands DLT repo solution for HQLA workflow with Canadian Tier 1 bank. In the past, I talked about some of this, about, for example, repo swaps. This was posted, of course, back in September, but I want you guys to understand that Broadridge expanded beyond repo to management of high-quality liquid assets, with Tier 1 Canadian bank adopting new features. All right. Well, when you see some of these things about processing of trillions of dollars, months and transactions and so on, well, how do we have this tied into things like even with the RLN? That's the point I'm trying to bring to you guys. All right. So using the platform, HQLA is locked and tokenized, supporting its transfer using smart contracts. Look at this quote for a second. This implementation not only simplifies the workflow and generates cost savings, but also lays the foundation for further DLT use cases that can drive even greater efficiencies and innovation in the financial sector. Okay. Well, speaking of that sector, will that lead to other particular big players? And the answer is yes. And here's the highlight. The cash lay can be settled in the conventional manner. In May, DLL integrated with JP Morgan's JPM coin to support on-chain settlement with the two blockchain technologies integrated via what APIs? Now think about that for a moment. In the deep dives, how many times do we talk about JP Morgan with Quant through the Overledger? Now, people say indirectly speaking, yes and no. We saw a few months back that JP Morgan selected, for example, Oracle, and Oracle's infrastructure is with the Overledger. Oracle is part of the TC307 Quant Overledger ecosystem. So to see this, well, again, put two and two together even with that. This brings us to this next part, and this is one of the main highlights of this particular live show, and this will, of course, be chopped up later for you guys, and that is this. It's the people behind the scenes, the meetups. If all of this went right over your head, at least look at this key area, because here you're going to see this. I told you I'd give you an RSN update. Here in the update, you see, plain as day, Regulated Settlement Network, PoC use cases. The RSN PoC tested two scenarios. Again, back to what you saw literally, where? Right here. Aha. Exactly. So, where am I going with this? Well, it's a multi-asset DVP settlement. Remember how we put some emphasis a while back about the guy from the RLN talking about if you can accomplish delivery versus payment, you have literally grabbed the most unsung but most important aspect of cross-border payments. So look what it says. Cross-network settlement. Those scenarios consisted of what? We're going to get into this. Because if we're able to solve this, like what was pointed out from the RLN about client to client, bond versus, for example, delivery versus payment settlement, and also have dealer to dealer with the treasury. Well, how many times did Quant mention this in the past? I'm not going to do another deep dive about this. But the key thing is all these people came together, especially the ones from Citi, and they're talking about this. How do I link this to Ripple XRP? You need to sit here for a moment and soak this in. I fast forward to this key area of this video. This is a long video. Listen to this. Smash the like if you haven't done so already. Pay attention to this. Here we go.
We'll get into some of the reasoning for that, but then also to demonstrate some of the flexibility and optionality for institutions based on their preferred setup to establish some direct API-based connectivity between a network and the RSN, as we'll see in the kind of NTN use case from Jonathan. On the Swift piece and the approach that we took, I can kind of break it down. There's kind of two key components. The first is a kind of a central orchestration and routing layer, which, because again, we're in this experimental sandbox state, we've got a simulated version of Swift's platform that handles orchestration type of capabilities. And then the kind of second piece is a lightweight interface component that can actually be deployed onto each of these different respective networks, whether that's the RSN, the MTN, Broadridge, Tacit, et cetera. That's technology agnostic. And really what that allows is to be configured by the local network operator to identify when you have kind of cross-network identified transactions, handling translation, again, into the ISO 20022 format and back into the kind of local native DLT formats, and really having that be an interface into the kind of overall orchestration layer in between. There's the kind of the benefits of following this Swift approach. Thanks, Roy. The benefits of following the Swift model approach that we think if you have a bit more of a standardized, secure type of gateway connection rather than a multitude of different bilateral connections that could be the case. Obviously, in a contained POC environment with a handful of networks, there's a lot of value in proving out point-to-point connections, and there's benefits there. But when we, someone mentioned earlier scalability, and we think around kind of long-term potential scalability of solutions like this, that's where we see some of the value in the hub and spoke type of model that we kind of primarily opted to use for this. And then the kind of last part is, I guess, just and Jonathan will go more into that, is again just really allowing different modes of interoperability and integration to be tested. Obviously, every institution that will connect has different design choices, different considerations that they're looking at, and any market has good competitive options. So there are opportunities, and we wanted to make sure we included that in the scope for the RSN PoC as well.
Thank you. It's a great framing of kind of why it's so important to us and kind of what we did to help build out and explore that. And I think, as you mentioned, I think it'd be good to dig in a bit of detail to one of the particular use cases we looked at for cross-network interaction, which was MasterCard's multi-token network. So maybe turning to you, Jonathan, can you talk a bit about the MTN and how it functioned within the RSN exploration?
Thanks very much, Charles. So what we're seeing and hearing here is the vast number of capabilities that digital asset and tokenized money and the capabilities that brings out to the ecosystem. With a multi-token network, we're really looking at how do we enable commercial bank money to become smarter and to be able to be used in a wider range of different use cases. So what we wanted to do and demonstrate in the use case here was show how RSN can kind of extend its capabilities through by allowing other networks to build upon it. So we leveraged the connectivity that Jack spoke about in terms of the Swift connectivity, but also through direct APIs to enable transactions that were happening and enabled by the multi-token network to be settled directly in RSN using central bank money, tokenized central bank money. So the use cases we really looked at was the ability for a set of participants, two client banks that were on both the RSN network and the MTN network to enable their clients to purchase a digital asset. And they did that by enabling MTN to be used as a payment mechanism on that digital asset platform. So by having this embedded payment mechanism, those clients could use their commercial bank money on the participant directly on that network to pay for a digital asset. And what we enabled and demonstrated was that purchase of the digital asset could be synchronized with the settlement that was happening between the institutions in central bank money. So providing near real-time settlement through two different connectivity mechanisms, both one case the direct connection, but also through the Swift network to show how additional use cases can really be unlocked through the RSN model. And I think there's something incredibly powerful here by having this design that enables this kind of settlement substrate to be in place, holding both commercial bank tokenized commercial bank money and tokenized central bank money, but exposing that through a set of APIs and connectivity mechanisms that enable others to build on top of it. We're seeing the huge amount of innovations happening in this space. It's moving so incredibly quickly. So having a model that allows the ecosystem to be supported as new use cases come about with different participants, different payment networks, but all to be able to make advantage of that settlement capability in central bank money is a huge advantage. And being able to do that on a 24/7 basis in near real time really opens up the capabilities of what you can do with existing commercial bank money that exists in a variety of different places. So it's been, I think, a really powerful demonstration. If you design the platform in the right way, it really becomes a kind of substrate and a foundation for further innovation to happen on top of it.
Thank you. Maybe just staying with you for a minute, maybe you could talk a bit more about some of the other interoperability cases we looked at and what the benefits they offered as well.
Yeah, so I'll speak to the Tacit use case there, and Charles, because what Tacit really demonstrated was they are a network in themselves, enabling tokenized central bank money or tokenized commercial bank money to be used between their participants. But those participants are not necessarily going to be members or able to be members of RSN itself. So what the Tacit use case demonstrated was there was a model of an existing RSN member to act as a settlement agent for these other different types of institutions. So again, showing this layering on approach that enabled non-member participants to benefit from that clearing and settlement, or the settlement that happens in commercial tokenized central bank money between the participants of the Tacit network. So again, it's kind of really broadening out the scope of who an RSN network can benefit there. It's not just the direct members, but through these relationships that can form, acting as a settlement agent, you can really broaden out the level of capabilities to other networks and to other participants in that network. So I think it's a really interesting demonstration by Tacit there to show what could be done and how the benefits of this real-time settlement in central bank money on a 24/7 basis can really be opened up to a broader audience.
So the emphasis is the non-member participants. All right, well, sounds good on paper, but when we jump back before I presented that particular clip, if you will, well, there was a lot of emphasis on the people from ISO. So again, Gilbert Verdian's call to action, basically, or get off the pot. And where I'm going with that is basically what's going on with ISO, because Quant in itself is ISO, not ISO 222, but ISO TC 307, their own particular standard for building on blockchain. But if they're the orchestrator, I should say if they are the orchestrator, in that clip, how many times did you see references to, synchronization, harmonization, orchestration, and so on? So again, this is all adding up for me. Where does it lead to? Well, it leads to, again, call for action, which already happened last August, and also to the call to evidence. That's why I was presenting that particular piece to you. All right, so the evidence is clear that there will be this new shift, if you will. So when we talk about members and participants and so on, well, if the call to action is there's a mandate coming up for November of next year, well, if you are a non-member participant, well, how long do you really have to become just that, a member? A member of what? The Regulated Liability Network? Member of maybe the RSN, the Regulated Settlement Network? Because, we could FUD QNT all day long when it comes to, it's just an ERC20 token. But understand that with full interoperability, you're not settling, necessarily speaking, in ERC20 QNT. No, you are settling with real-time gross settlements as shown in numerous demos. I'm not going to do it again, because I've shown it numerous times. You could quickly settle with something like Ripple XRP through what? The Overledger. And we've shown this, or even XDC. Which brings me to this next particular part, to pound it home. I'm going to pull up, also on your screen, is this key area that I fast forwarded to. And let's just get into it. It is this. It's basically from a year ago, but it pounds home everything that we have been talking about. This is at the Digital Euro Conference, DEC 23, December 23rd, excuse me. Regulated Liability Network by Dr. Jan Rosen from Ernst & Young. Think about some of these key people. All right. As I zoom in a little bit about this, I want you to see some of the emphasis before I play this. Key building blocks of the RLN. RLN is a public-private partnership and concept for a new FMI with the following characteristics. Has to be regulated, has to be on a global network, based on DLT, shared ledger, has to be multi-currency and multi-asset. Did we not see some of these things recently? Has to be programmable. Think about that, programmable. Doesn't Quant boast the whole thing of programmable money? I mean, come on. Are we overthinking this at this point? Look at the next part. This will apply only to digital money that are considered as regulated liabilities, and it's to focus on the RLN. Central bank money, quant, check. Commercial bank money, check mark for quant again. Electronic money, maybe some of the other bigger players like your Ripple XRPs and so on. But it has to be always on, just like you saw recently, right, which was mentioned. And you have to have on-chain finality of settlement, right? Well, it would make more sense to go with something like XRP. And speaking of XRP, if you go to the very bottom of the screen, of all the ones that are listed here, okay, who do you see listed right next to IBM? You see Ripple. Okay. What about some of the other key players of, what they're connected to? Stasis, they're connected to XDC. What about, for example, Circle with stablecoins and so on? That's there, right? And for example, you have, I believe, the Central Bank of Hungary, if I'm not mistaken. They already had that partnership going on with Quant. That's, if you're wondering which one that is, that's right next to DZ Bank and between Banker Verbrand. You obviously see the Bank of International Settlements. You see, for example, Visa. It's hard to see it because it's, the timeline's covered up. You see Banque de France. And of course, you see JP Morgan. So all these big players are here. But again, emphasis on Ripple at this particular point. Why? Because I want to highlight the interest around the globe. Right. The interest around the globe is saying, do you have evidence to support Gilbert Verdian's call to action with a call to evidence? The answer is yes. Listen to this. Jump back here in a moment to wrap it all up. Here we go.
So this concept has now basically gained a lot of interest around the globe. There's currently an investigation phase in the US where 8 banks came together with the New York Fed innovation team to do a pilot. So this phase has been completed. So we expect the reports of this pilot to come out very soon. We have interest groups in Australia. There are people looking into it in the UK, in Switzerland, Hong Kong, Singapore, and also there's an interest in Europe as well. So, and I think the beauty about this is everyone is basically working on the same concept. So it's not like everyone has his own concept and trying to bring this together. It's the same white paper they are referring to, it's the same mechanics. And this is the good thing about this.
Hey!
Because Tony published this publicly, so there's a website called regulatedliabilitynetwork.org where you can download this white paper. There have been many key contributors to this white paper, not just banks, also PSPs and network operators. It's basically open source. It's not published under the city logo. It's a common or it's a joint effort from the whole industry. And it's still not finished. Of course, we know there will be probably variations going forward. So it's still open for discussion. And all of these groups which come together around the globe will contribute to this concept. So that's the reason why I like the idea. Okay, having said that, I think it would be good if you download the white paper to understand what this is all about. And yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, the point is seeing how this all comes full circle. Jumping to the next part, because what you also saw was a lot of emphasis on POC, proof of concept, which brings us to this right here. I'll pull this up on your screen for just a moment. So when you saw his presentation, he showed, for example, Australia. He showed, for example, the United States. A lot of you guys want to see what's going on in the United States. Well, it brings us to this. SIFMA, all right? This was posted December 5th, not that long ago. What does it say? Members of the United States financial sector demonstrate feasibility of multi-asset cross-network settlement using shared ledger technology. This is not aging well. Are we not paying attention to this? Because if you are paying attention to this, you can see clearly how this is all coming full circle. The regulated settlement network proof of concept demonstrated the potential of a shared ledger technology to upgrade multi-asset and cross-network transaction settlement for domestic users of US dollar and regulated securities. My goodness. Why isn't this being talked about enough? I have no idea. Maybe because we're blindsided with, you know, all the retail news going on out there. But I'll highlight this for you guys. December 5th, right from New York. Interesting to see at the same time, Brad Garlinghouse or Ripple announcing, hey, we got the whole thing of, you know, approval from New York. Remember that? Right? Yeah, this all adds up. So members of the U.S. financial services sector published the findings of an industry proof of concept that explored the feasibility of regulated settlement network RSN. RSN is envisioned as an interoperable settlement network. Think about the terminology for multi-asset and cross-network transactions. All right, what kind of results came from it? I know I'm reading this a lot verbatim, but it needs to be read. Building on the results of a previous POC, again, back to what I showed you from a year ago, the RSN POC tested how simultaneous and coordinated 24/7 settlement capabilities would be achieved for multi-asset and cross-network transactions involving tokenized central and commercial bank deposits, U.S. Treasury securities, and other regulated assets. Now, I also got to read this real quick. Currently, transfers of commercial bank deposits, wholesale central bank deposits, and securities such as U.S. Treasuries and investment-grade IG debt. Look at this. Look at this. Come on, pay attention to this. I'm serious. Don't let this go past your head. Are all settled on a separate siloed systems. I mean, my God, back to Gilbert Verdian's examples. How many times over the course of many years now has he talked about this? Breaking down the walled gardens, right? So this is pounding home. This can lead to inefficiencies in transaction processing, increased operational risk, higher costs due to reconciliations across disparate systems, reduced transparency, and slower settlement times. Hence why, in order to have the regulated liability network, you also had to have the regulated settlement network. All right, let's bring you to the next part of this. Why is this important? Well, in this executive summary, what do you see? The regulated settlement network, RSN proof of concept, is an industry initiative built upon the foundation established within the regulated liability network. Of course, it was founded basically in 2023. And look, United States is right there at the forefront. So I think Michael Cornwell was right on this. He said it a few years ago. He believed that the United States was sitting in the background the whole time. There's your answer. It was literally sitting there in the background the whole time. And I'm not trying to get conspiracy here, but to me that makes sense. I will read the bottom part. So it's the outcome of the RSN technology work stream focusing on three key accomplishments: the prototype of a shared settlement venue, the development of a multi-asset infrastructure, and the addition of interoperability capabilities. Think about it. Don't overthink about it. Which brings us to this. This is from SIMFA. Look what it says. Seriously. The experiment was conducted in a test environment and used simulated data to conduct transactions denominated in US dollars. And this all came out this same time that Brad Garlinghouse of Ripple XRP says, we got the green light from New York, everybody, in regards to RLUSD. Come on. Come on. All right, look at this. Speaking of the RLN, what do we have from Gilbert Verdian? I'm telling you flat out, look, what do we have from Gilbert Verdian? Gilbert states, good evening. Today at SWIFT with regulators, this is a while back, don't get me wrong, policymakers and FS colleagues discussing the future of financial services, payments, and digital money. Lots of opportunities to innovate with who, what, where, when, how, the regulated liability network to fight fraud with programmability. That's the thing I mentioned at the beginning of the outline. So programmability, right. Transform the financial infrastructure to digital and bring innovation for A2A and cross-border use cases. Wow. Thank you, Gilbert Verdian. What else do we have in regards to this? Look at what it says on the far right. Cross-ledger transaction integration. Over-ledger, if you're not aware of it, solution from Quant Network, available for OBP and deployed on OCI. Middleware that enables developers to write clients that interop across OBP, Corda, by the way, Quorum, Ethereum, Ripple XRP, Bitcoin, Stellar, IOTA, EOS. We've already been down that rabbit hole. And back to Gilbert Verdin. What does he have? Members of the United States financial sector have demonstrated the feasibility of multi-asset cross-network settlement. And back to what I just literally talked about. He likes this. This is, of course, from Quant Papa's language of Dutch. So Gilbert likes this. Why would Gilbert go out of his own way to like this? Think about it. Don't overthink about it. So with that said, there's a big shift that's going to happen. But let's face it, some people will only put the focus on what's going to happen at the end of this year. Or you will get fudded out of this by other channels out there. They're going to say that there's way better opportunities with other things. Hey, guess what? I just provide research. You got to choose what you got to do. I get that. But my thing is this. If you weather the storm this long enough already, you can't wait to see what's really going to happen. That would absolutely eat me alive to the core of my own soul and being. I would want to find out what would actually happen with real utility being put into motion. You know, this is still just retail money that we see as far as price action. When we invested into utility for a real reason, we're not even there yet. My key thing is give it a chance, see what happens, right? Yes, there's some projects that have better tokenomics than the others. But when we talk about, you know, real-time gross settlements and so on, well, Ripple XRP has to stand out in that regard. Stellar has to stand out in that regard. And guess what? Something I forgot to mention also, back to that whole thing of what we shared earlier. And that is, on the screen, MTN was mentioned numerous times. MTN in regards to MasterCard. So with Quant, you already have the whole thing with MasterCard. Hedera, you already have the whole thing with MasterCard. And one of the key partnerships recently announced from Meridian with Stellar was with MasterCard. MasterCard doesn't want to miss the boat. Neither does Visa, moving into this next era of Web3. We're not in Web3 yet. We're like at 2.7, if you will. But we will get there. They want to be there too, because they realize that they have to have a seat at the table when it comes to the regulated liability network, but what it settles in with the regulated settlement network. So do me a favor. If you listen to this entire outline, simply type this into the comments. And that is RSN, as in Regulated Settlement Network. And I'll know that you listened to the entire outline. Really appreciate you guys listening to these deep dives, whether they're on the live show or they're in recorded format. As the saying goes, know what you have, know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD 110%. God bless you all. I'm rooting for all your success. I truly mean that.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. It's just a few taps. You can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.